How are you ladies?
Doing great.
Hey, Ariel. Hey, Leslie. What else do we have?
All right, we'll just give it another 30 seconds and then we're going to get started talking about motivation today. I really enjoyed working on this one, so.
Yeah, it'll be good.
All righty. Well, I just wanted to welcome everyone. This is week 2 of our program for goals, growth, and gratitude. And today we're going to be talking about motivation and kind of segueing off, building off week 1's goal setting session and moving on to motivation, which, as I just mentioned, I really found really interesting when I was, researching and preparing for this session. So I'm really excited about it. And Jackie and I are going to kind of just go back and forth, and then we're just going to do a little bit of a presentation. And then we would love to have your feedback, questions, or anything that you guys want to add. Just feel free to do so. So we'll kick it off. So I think to talk about motivation, you have to understand. Let's actually try to define it. And it's the ability to drive oneself to take initiative and action to pursue goals and to complete tasks. It's an inner drive, and I think this is important. An inner drive to take action, to create, and to achieve. It's an intangible, but it's and it kind of goes back to our first session on goal setting about your intrinsic versus extrinsic reasons for why you're setting a goal. And just keep that in mind as we kind of progress through this, because I think that's really what is key. And so I'll get back into that in a second. So motivation, a few other takeaways, and I'm going to send you guys this little note sheet as well after our session today. But I think we can probably all agree that the beginning of our goal setting is pretty, you're excited, you set these goals. First couple of days, first weeks, probably going pretty well. And then things get a little bit harder, or they kind of start going by the wayside, and you may not completely do that daily check-in or whatever your goal is. You may start getting a little bit off course, and then before you know it, the goal's kind of gone. So that's when motivation you really need that. And it requires us to believe in ourselves, to stay inspired, despite the setbacks or the times where things aren't, you get distracted, you get busy, life gets in the way, and all of a sudden, you don't have that anymore. So you don't have that initial kind of surge. Few other things. One thing that really hit home to me was when I was researching this, and I was reading some articles, and one sentence that came out at me, and it says, "Do you really know yourself better than anyone?" And I think we all think we know ourselves. And I kind of took pause with that. I kind of thought about that. I'm like, that's really important, because if you don't really know yourself, you may not be either selecting goals, or you may not understand why your previous goal didn't actually, your goals kind of fell by the wayside before, because maybe it wasn't something that was important to you. There might be a really, variety of reasons, but think about that. Do you really know yourself and really know, think about that. We'll come back to that as well. People often overgeneralize motivation. We think we're either motivated or we're not, but it's not really an on-off switch. It's more of an ebb and flow. And I actually came upon one book. It's called Fast Track Class, Activate Your Motivation. And in that book, it talks about motivation being a flow. And to harness it, you have to really dig deep inside yourself, really know yourself, to really build those sustainable long-term motivations. And in this book, they talked about, the author talked about three layers of motivation. And I think this is really, in a nutshell, what the most important thing I found. And layer 1 is the surface layer. And that's more of your external, not versus external motivations. And it's, to go back to that analogy, like, for instance, you want to lose 10 pounds because, you might have people give you compliments. Hey, you lost all this weight, or something where you're getting external motivation or external, like a praise or a compliment. And that's like an external acknowledgement. but that's really fleeting. So that's like your first layer. The layer 2 is support. And that's when you get enablers or other people that enabling is used in a positive way. Friends and family who is still external, but they're supporting you. So that's your layer 2. And that will help you stay motivated a little bit longer than the extrinsic. But really the intrinsic and the core, that layer 3, is the true driving force that's going to sustain that flow and that motivation. And that's your purpose. And that's what you've got to find for sustained motivation in the long term. And that's what really differentiates the motivated from the unmotivated. And that is sustained. This is getting a little bit complicated, so we can go back to this, by 2 things: having meaning and forward movement. And that goes back to that intrinsic, really understanding who you are, what drives you, and really knowing yourself and what brings you meaning to your life. And it doesn't have to be this, world-changing thing. It could be, I want to lose 10 pounds because I want to lower my cholesterol levels because I really, or I want to lose 10 pounds because I'm going to have less stress on my knees so I can get up and play with my grandkids more. So but it has meaning to you, so that when you don't feel like working out, or you don't feel like, you feel like eating that, those 20 chocolate chip cookies, I'm using extremes, you're going to dig deeper, and you're going to have a little bit more ability to, the days that are hard, the days that you're tired or anything like that, you're going to have that internal core reason, your purpose for achieving that, for working toward that goal. And the second point is forward movement. And that's those tiny little daily steps, whether it's tracking your food or it's walking around the block when you don't feel like doing anything. Maybe your goal was to walk 30 minutes and all you did was walk 10. You're still moving forward. You're still having that forward momentum to whatever goal you're having. And those are the 2 things, and they're really tied to the core of who you are. And that's, in all the studies and all the anecdotal information that I've explored, those are the 2 ways that you're going to have sustained motivation in the long and really achieve those goals. And so it goes back to our first session about goal setting, and find your why. Why are you pursuing your goal? If it's a vague reason, really try to clarify it and understand it. And it just has to be important to you. Again, it doesn't have to be a world-changing thing, but it has to be an important why to you, not to other people, not for anything external, really. I mean, those are nice, and those are great kind of secondary layers, but they're not the core for really long-term sustainability. I'm going to let Jackie kind of weigh in, and then I'm going to come back and talk about tips that I've found and that I found would be helpful in trying to move along on that motivation process. But I'll let Jackie kind of weigh in. I think you might be muted.
My bad, sorry. There was a plane going by, so it was really loud. Thank you, Andrea. That was all so great. I mean, I'm sure all of you can kind of just see like, yes, or have been able to relate to something there, something that you're working on, and understand a little bit of that in the Department of Motivation. So I loved bringing it back to the why, and everybody that watched the video that we started with goal setting or was there in our live session, something I always say is where there's a will, there's a way, but I like to change it to where there's a why, there's a way, because it's really all about our why when it comes down to it, and especially with that motivation. And working one-on-one with a lot of clients, we always do this with goal setting and when our motivation is there, and trying to figure out that accountability that I can give them and how they can show up. So with that, a lot of times we talk about what we're going to do when that motivation it ends, right? So for example, I bet all of you can think of something, but I always use the New Year's example, or more specifically this month, I know a lot of people do Sober October and or something like that, and try to cut down alcohol, things like that. And if it's something you've never done before, especially starting the new year, when you're like, this is the year, this is my year, I'm going to do something big, your motivation is at its highest. And we know that, right? Because you just are in that mindset to want to create change. However, as Andrea was just saying, that motivation doesn't last forever. And that's just a known fact. So we have to look for other ways and options and see how we can continue that drive. And that's why we talk about our why so much. Motivation also, really just piggybacking on everything Andrea just said, is really driven by ourselves and what motivates us. So to elaborate on that, where she already started touching upon, was talking about how you are motivated. So thinking about, if you're a person who likes to give gifts, or if you're a person who likes to do things, are you the person in the kitchen who loves to like host and show, oh guys, I made food and all these things? Like, how are you motivated? Are you competitive? Does that challenge you? This is also an exercise I do with a lot of clients to figure out, what is your motivation, where I can help you. Do you like to set a number and say, I am a competitive person, I want to beat that number for myself? And is that a healthy relationship for you to have with yourself? I know, for example, I am one that likes to show my friends a good time, or I do it a lot through food. I like to cook for them. So that's an example I use. So if that is something, right, I would set a goal for personal growth that's relating to how I'm motivated. So if that's a motivation for me to be able to feel joy with others, then maybe if I reach a goal, I set kind of something to, like, I set something on the side to feel good with others because I reached that goal. So again, that's a little bit of the external goal setting, but then if it matches your why, it comes together as a whole. Does that kind of make sense to you guys, of thinking about your goals and what motivates you? Because even though I'm saying that with having joy with friends, it still relates back to what you're doing for yourself, because that's part of your life. And everything we're doing here is to create a balanced lifestyle. So we don't want you to go restricted and feel like you're just miserable, because that's not what we want to feel our entire lives. And I know last week some of you expressed, wanting to get out of certain mindsets and wanting to recreate things. So that said, it's going to be challenging to stay motivated when it goes down, but you have to dig a little deeper into that why to continue the motivation past those 2 weeks. Like I said, I do have actually friends who are doing no drinking for a month, no wine, no nothing. And they're all excited because they hit the first week and a half. And I'm like, okay, like this is your moment, because this is when it starts to go down a little bit. So your why, as Andrea said, is the most important thing that you can go back to. And I suggest, exercises, right? This is a great exercise. And I want you guys to think about it, after this call, to sit and write down that one thing you're working on, or maybe you had a top 3 goals this month. Write those down. And then I want you to think of 2 things that you can follow that with. An external motivation. So why are you motivated externally for that goal? And then I want you to write down the internal one. So more the external, it's going to make me feel like this in the social setting, or something that relates to you besides your personal motivation. And then write that personal one down. And I want you to keep those really close, because we're going to have you open those back up when that motivation goes down. And I think that's really going to be the key to your success here, is just remembering what your purpose is, as Andrea said, and moving forward from there and doing something that you've never done before. This is why we're here, right? Because you want to reach that next step and you want to make it past the lack of motivation point. We want to get past there and keep going up. So, Andrea, I'll go back to you, but yeah.
Well said. Perfect. I wrote down some notes there too. I'm going to do that right after. And I love that, when there is a why, there is a way. I think that's great. I'm going to throw out a few tips for trying to sustain your motivation. And then we'd love to, like I said before, I'd love to have you guys weigh in, and we want to give you an opportunity to speak as well. So I think creating, I think number one, and this is important, I think we could all probably, most of us, at least the people that I speak to here, we all kind of sometimes feel overwhelmed in our lives. Our lives are busy. We have we all have pretty busy lives, and we don't always focus our energy on just trying to simplify our lives so that we don't get distracted as often and feel as overwhelmed. Because I think that the people that I talk to, and myself sometimes as well, sometimes you feel overwhelmed, the goal setting that you've done kind of falls out the window because you're just trying to take care of that daily life. You're trying to get your kids or your dogs organized and your job or whatever it is. We all have different things. And all of a sudden the day's kind of at the end of the day and you're like, I haven't tracked my food today. I haven't really done this. So you know what? Oh, well, I'm just gonna, so then it's just it's those little things that kind of make you that daily busyness kind of creates a little bit of too many distractions for you to stay goal focused. The second one is don't pursue too many goals at once. Just pick one or two. Get back to being simplifying things. So pick one or two, maybe three at the most. Rank them like Jackie said, your top ones. Prioritize them. There's always room and time for secondary goals down the road. Break down those goals like we talked about in week 1, the SMART program. Be specific, create measurable ones, and do down the SMART program. And then manage your expectations. I think this is a big one. Obstacles pile up, you might get frustrated, and then you decide, you know what, you're not seeing that first couple days short-term success. And so you're like, you know what, this goal isn't attainable. And you kind of fall off the wagon a little bit. And I think it's your brain is constantly at work. And unfortunately, it can sabotage us because it's always looking for ways to kind of tell itself, is this worth it? Is it really worth doing all this to get to my goal? And a lot of times the brain is saying, you know what? No. And so you have to really get back to that why and almost push against your brain. You'd think your brain is working for you, but sometimes it doesn't. And it might say, you know what? I'm just giving up on this. And so you have to really pay attention to that brain because it sometimes is not our friend in that respect. Surround yourself, what I talked about before is surround yourself with supportive people. And I love this. Coach with compassion. Find people, and this is what I do with all the people that I train and try to coach is I'm not going to be that person who's going to beat you down. You're probably already beating yourself down enough. So I want to be that person who's going to be compassionate because we're all we all struggle with stuff and we all need a little bit more compassion. So I think that surround yourself with supportive people and ask for help when you need it. And practice gratitude toward yourself and toward everything in your life. I think that's another one where we all could probably most of us could improve upon that. So I would love maybe even part of this program is just jot down when you feel like just something to be grateful for, because that will instantaneously, we talked about this before, instantaneously change your brain to start working for you. And it's going to be like, hey, it just changes your mindset in about 20 seconds. So try to do that, get enough rest. If you don't, that's going to probably be the number one thing that derails your goals. So get enough rest. And this is getting back into what Jackie was saying, celebrate achievements. And that was a great way that you described that by maybe, yes, it is external, but we choose the example of just, cooking for other people or doing a small celebration or something. So celebrate those small achievements because like I said before, it's one of the key things is forward movement. So celebrate those. Even if you just had a small week where you might have said, you know what, I only walked I use that 10 minutes instead of 30 minutes example. But let's say you did that every single day, whereas in the past, you may not even have walked this 10 minutes. Celebrate that. That's still moving forward. Even if you've, quote, didn't reach your goal, you may need to kind of change that initial goal. And it may take a little longer to meet the goal, but you're still moving forward. So celebrate that. And those were the big things, the big top 8 that I found spoke to me. And I hope they speak to you guys to kind of help you with your motivation. Jackie, do you have anything to add before we turn it over to the participants? Oh, you're muted again.
Sorry. So I'm really excited about next week because I know you just dipped into it. We keep saying that each week. We're excited for the next topic, but the reason why we're doing these topics in sequence is because they all kind of play off of each other. But Andrea just mentioned the too much on your plate part, which we'll start talking about some organization in the next coming weeks. And I feel like there's something I always go back to with if you can't do one thing if you're trying to do everything, right? So if you do too much at once, and we live in a fast-paced world, and I've got to say, even in exercise, right, when people want to cram in as much exercise as possible, all in 20 minutes, hardcore, everything, the most I've gotten out of everything in my life is slowing down, right? Taking one step at a time. So I think that's really an important thing, because on your plate, you've got a lot going on, but you have to remember what you're working on in the moment, okay? That one step, those few top goals, and your why is going to play into those through the entire marathon. So you can't lose sight of that. But I did want to touch upon something quickly, kind of as we end, the motivation factor for you guys to remember as you go. And I saw this the other day and I really, really enjoyed it. And it was talking about your self-improvement, and I mentioned about New Year's, or you have this month, right? We have a timeline for the JUMPSTART program. You're like, I got to do all this in this month. So I want you to kind of listen to this quickly and just think about it for a second about self-improvement. That self-improvement must be a way of life. Okay, so this is our lifestyle. This isn't just for New Year's. This is the difference between motivation and your dedication. It's not just for New Year's. It's not just for your JUMPSTART program right now. This is just your entire life and your well-being. Think about that. We don't have a long time here. It is timed. So whatever you want that life to be for you, I mean, think about that. Self-improvement must be a way of life. It's not something for New Year's or just birthdays with more zeros added on. It's your daily deliberate efforts to set positive intentions, get clear on what you want, practice good habits, demand the best of yourself and relating to others, and show up in the world congruent with the person you want to become. If you're not working on yourself consciously like this, trust me, you're going backwards, and the regret of not growing and realizing your potential will be real. Okay? So think about those words of, we talk about regret a lot and say, I was too scared to do something. Fear is another topic I love talking about, because courage and fear, right? They're almost the opposite, but they go hand in hand. That you can't, or vulnerability, there's a whole talk on this, vulnerability and your courage, right? Those, you have to be courageous. You have to be vulnerable to be courageous, because you got to do something you've never done. Okay, you gotta work to be better, and that is the hardest thing. Just being vulnerable and letting yourself do new things and make progress, and be open to that number 2 layer, which is your support. That's what we're all here for. And I know working with clients, and maybe even in this group, I find that the number 1 thing really can be just opening up to others to say, hey, this is an issue, or this is what I've been struggling with. And then also the number 1 thing that I see is that people actually have the exact same struggles. They don't realize it. And you're like, oh,
absolutely.
Right? So you think you're the only one, and guess what? You're not. So that's why we're all here, because we're all working on things and to be better. And I know a lot of you are working one-on-one with Andrea about specific things, and I'm super excited to see everybody's progress. But I want you to just make sure after this session, and we'll open it up to discussion, writing down something, even if you put it on your fridge. I used to put mine on my fridge of my why, or in a safe place where you feel as comfortable. But back to your why, because if you don't see that why every day, or when that motivation is low, guess what? It's the same with snacking. The cookies are there, the chips are there, they're in your face, you're hungry, you're not prepared, okay? That's where you need to have that little why. Why am I doing this again? Why did I make this progress? And I think from there, once we start continuing past these few first weeks where you've been starting, you'll start to notice that change. And last thing about that, as Andrea just said, there's something about when we feel like it's wrong, right? We're like, oh, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. The greatest achievements you're going to have in life are the ones that are going to be the most uncomfortable. So, you say, oh, it's a sign I shouldn't do it because it doesn't, didn't feel good. Those signs aren't always your signs, right? Sometimes it's like, this feels really uncomfortable and I don't want to do it, but that might actually be your sign. So think about that as you go ahead and challenge yourself through this week to do something uncomfortable that you internally know is going to help better you, and trust that process. And we'll get there for sure. I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you.
But I'm thinking maybe we can open it up to you guys and see, if everybody, I don't know, Andrew, do you want to kind of touch upon a motivation part, like with what people are working on their goals, or kind of the open-ended question of like, what's your biggest downfall when that motivation, starts to drop? We can.
Yeah, and I know this isn't always comfortable. I mean, I know we don't want anybody to be forced to talk if they don't want to. I can just, there's definitely a general theme in people that I'm working with is these are all the goals we set for ourselves are not ones that we haven't tried before. So I think and a lot of them overlap. So I think we're all kind of in the same, and I don't want to share everybody's situation, but if you don't feel like talking, that's absolutely fine. I'm going to show you that I'm vulnerable. So my goal isn't really food or exercise, but mine's trying to be a little more confident in my public speaking. So that's my goal. So you can imagine how hard it is for me to get on Zoom every week and try to show up to do these sessions on Zoom with all of you. So that's something that I'm working on. So, why am I motivated to do that? Because yes, I want to help all of you, but I also want to make this something that I can improve upon, because I think it's good for me to learn how to do and to be more confident. And I think and I'm trying to understand, so that's my goal. So I'm just kind of turning back the curtain a little bit and showing you what I'm working on. So yes, it's not a food or exercise one this particular time, but I'm trying to really focus on that. And that's a measured goal. So I'm just sharing so hopefully me sharing and kind of opening up might make you guys want to do that as well right here. So and if you guys, you can just raise your hand if you want to. Go ahead.
Anything. If anyone wants to share or ask questions, we're here for you guys. We're here to help support you through. So this is a time to, lean into us if there's anything that we can help you with in this stage after you've just made your goals and where you're at and setting that plan. We're happy to help here, just, in brief little communication that we're able to do this. So Muriel.
Thank you.
I guess, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess my biggest challenge is I feel like I'm a very motivated person and I am competitive, but I do, when something's not going right, I'll just say oh yeah, I can let that goal go for today and go tomorrow. I think that's my biggest challenge is.
I just saw half of you smile because you knew.
I'm like,
so when you say you let that goal go for today, until tomorrow, do you actually pick up on the goal the next day, or do you or is that the beginning of the end normally?
I'm usually good at picking it up again, but it might happen 2 or 3 times a week. I guess you would just call that a cheat time. But I'm like, oh.
So Muriel, can I say, so if you look back, I always say this to people too. So say you're skipping a day, right? Now it's maybe a day, but can you look back at a time where it was like a week or a month or a end all?
Oh, of course.
So there's your progress report right already, right? Which is great. So this is why Andrea and I talk about the little celebrations, is that as soon as we make improvements, we start getting harder and harder on ourselves, because before it was a month you dropped off, but now it's only a day or 2. That's huge, right? So at least you're there, but then that next step is to obviously just keep bridging the gap, right? And just start getting better. But Like, you've already been improving. That's amazing. But again, it's like the little, everything we just talked about is going to start to bridge that gap even daily. Never mind monthly. Now you're weekly, daily. And you'll get better and better at that consistency. It's just practice. Consistency is all practice. And you're not going to have, Andrew said last week too, you're not going to have, every day is not going to be perfect. And we need to give ourselves grace for that, because nobody, even the highest performers in life, I've seen life coaches at the very top, and I've taken sessions with them. They are the first to admit they have some pretty crappy days and some pretty off days. But the thing they don't let happen is they don't let it trickle down. They just reset. Yep. So you just reset every time.
Right. Thank you.
And feel free to raise your hand, or don't raise your hand, but have all of you guys written down your goals for what you're doing for this program? Have you guys written down your goals? Great. Awesome. Okay.
Anybody else, raise of hands if you have any questions or comments or anything you want to share.
Any requests? So we're going to be, oh, sorry, Leslie, go ahead.
No, I just have, I wrote down my goals, and they're really goals. They're things that I had done, but they kind of slipped away.
Okay.
And I had, after COVID, you know, this year has just been this year. And after I got vaccinated, I had a voice problem. And I did, not because of the vaccination, but from before. But I felt comfortable enough going to speech therapy that I was vaccinated and it was safe, because if you're going to speech therapy, what you're doing is basically spitting at the person across from you. And I did, although they had plexi now, and you know, but I did improve. And it was something where the speech therapist said, okay, you graduated, and I did. They did the testing, and you need to do this the rest of your life. And the other stuff you can just let go. Well, you know, I sounded good. So I kind of let the, you need to do this the rest of your life go away. And then I'm kind of back to where I was when I started. So one of my goals is to do the exercises every day. I know they work. They're not, it's not physical, have to get sweaty, have to put on exercise clothes to do them. I just have to do it. So that's one of my goals. And the 8 glasses of water doesn't hurt either.
What?
8 glasses of water.
Oh, 8 glasses.
A water goal. No, that's great, Leslie. Again, it really talks about the same subjects people, you know, really struggle with, of that consistency and falling off of things, right? It's almost like,
exactly.
It's almost like we know, right? We know what we need to do a lot of times, and sometimes we don't, but majority of the time we know what we need to do. But that's why we're talking about the ins and outs of what we need to do and how we can help ourselves and each other to follow through with those things and that consistency. Because you know what it is, you know what you want, you know what you're looking for. It's just trying to really push past the motivation factor and just keep it going for the long run. But that's why we say little day by day steps. You can't do everything at once, and nothing great happens overnight. So as much as, that's why motivation is hard, right? Because motivation, you're motivated, you're like, I'm going to see the results right away because I'm still motivated. That's not going to happen. So you just got to trust that process. And Leslie, I love that you're kind of diving right back in again, even though this year has presented a lot of struggles, but at the end, it's like, how are you gonna face something that's out of your control? You can do the things that are in your control, right? And you can pick back up, or you can just start over new, do what you need to do when things get, you know, jumbled. Life isn't going to be the way we always want it, but it's what we do against that to try and figure out what the next step is for us to better ourselves. So that's great, Leslie. Anybody else have any comments? Debbie?
Hi, I'm not muted, right?
No, you're good.
Okay. Okay, so some people weren't here last week. I'm not going to rehash all my goals, but I did meet with Andrea once during the week, and she really helped me like refine a little bit. So one of my goals had to do with this, like, I feel silly even saying it again, but it's like this OCD thing I have about getting on the scale every day. So I decided, like, in your talk to Jackie really helped me, because this is like, it's one thing, but it really affects like how I think about what I eat and food and everything else. So I decided that I was going to make my goal to get to, instead of going on every day, going on once a week. But I wasn't going to do that all at once because that was going to be too hard. So I decided that I would start with every other day, and then I like kind of build up to the week. So this is week 1, and I've gone to every other day, and I have to say, it's such a relief.
Oh my
Like,
God,
I can't believe
yes.
it. Yeah, like it's such a relief. Like, I'm so excited that I don't have to get on tomorrow. I got on today, and it was like, so it's already making me feel better. So I'm hopeful that this is achievable, and it's just going to make me less focused on that and more able to enjoy, you know, how my body feels and just like what I'm eating. I'm not like, I'm not going to think about it, but I just won't be focused on it in the same way. That being said, I do have a couple of other things that I'm working on, and
Can I
can't
ask you
say,
one question before you, did
Yeah.
it change, without getting on the scale as much, did it change your, the food or exercise choices that you made, or did you actually make better choices because you, like, I was wondering if it impacted that at all?
No, I mean, I actually don't really have bad choices. Like I told you,
Right, yeah, we talked about
there's no
that.
rhyme or reason to me as to why my weight will fluctuate one way or the other. I've been fortunate through my life, and I'm sure anything that's going on now is age related. So no, I didn't really change
Okay.
my, you know, eating
But
that much.
eventually you
It's
gave
just
yourself a
more like,
break.
it's more like a head thing. So my point is, I'm enjoying it more and not
Awesome.
focusing on it, because
So good.
I know. And so like, if I eat more one night and I know I'm not getting on the scale the next day, it's like, I don't think about it. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Awesome.
it's okay because I'm not doing it till 2 days later. And the good news is it stayed really stable. And Andrea actually said to me that getting on once a week is a better indicator anyway of your overall health. So that made me feel like that was like information that I didn't have. So it's really good that I had the opportunity to even talk about this, because that was a fact that I didn't know. So there's really no need to be on there every day. It's just like my thing. So anyway, that's just like a good thing. And as I said, I have other goals, and the bad news is I haven't done as much with those yet, but it's okay. We'll get to those. We'll get to
That's
those.
okay. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so good, Debbie. I want to relate it back to all you guys. Remember, so what Debbie just said, you know, sometimes we've already convinced ourselves in our brain that like, that's impossible. I can't, you know, I'm never going to get out of that. And once you hit one little part, like she just broke it down, all of a sudden it livens you to realize, whoa, like I just did that. I could probably do more. Right. So it gives you this like life back of being like, that's achievable. I'll give you a perfect example of this past weekend where, I had to give a big speech, and it was in front of about 180 people. And I was like, oh my God, like I can't. And the last time I gave one, I got like so nervous that it psyched me out. So I think if there's times where you feel like you failed before, leading up to trying it again psychs you out to make you feel like you can't do it, right? So then after doing it and feeling okay, so I went in this and I just wiped away those fears as trying to practice what I preach here. And I did it. And then all of a sudden that confidence again came back. So what it's doing, Debbie, for all of you, is taking those little steps, is regaining your confidence again to know that you can do it. Because once we doubt ourselves, our confidence goes right back down, and then we're just start to let it fester and realize or think you can't do it ever. And baby steps make the milestone happen, right? So every single one counts, and that's huge, Debbie. I'm so happy for you. Mindset is everything. My next thought is plans, guys. This is why we're making plans, and why we just said, what are you going to do after the motivation wears off? Or things like, Debbie, what what's, you know, think about your plan of like, and you'll talk about this with Andrea, but think about your plan if you get back on a scale and how your emotions are connected with that. What if it goes up or down or fluctuates, how you're going to feel? You have to be prepared for that too. So prep yourself in a positive way, not a negative way, to be like, oh my gosh, I'm scared to get on this scale because I don't know what it's going to say. Just be
Right.
like, you know what? I enjoyed
After my week vacation and wherever it is, right?
Yeah.
And eat 3 meals a day. Exactly. Yeah.
But prep your mind positively always for that, right? So that's what we're working on as well. It's just keeping that positive mindset that that's not going to dictate your life, right? Just like you're saying, it's making you feel more free. So those all are hand in hand.
Thank you.
That's so awesome to hear. Yes. Cool. Anybody else have any questions, comments too? Feel free to share. We're here for you.
And you can always share, you know, you can always send a message on the side, or you can send each one of us, or if you need another coaching session with me, happy to do that weekly. Some of us have set up multiple sessions. If you didn't do one last week and you want to, feel free to reach out or email me, you know, personally, and you want to talk about your goals, or maybe you had a goal and you didn't get it done this week, whatever it is, and you want to talk privately, that's fine as well. So I guess with that, unless anybody wants to raise their hand, we'll kind of close this session out. And again, next week, same time, and we're going to talk about decluttering.
Yep. And homework.
Oh, actually, no, next week's organizing. Sorry.
Yes, organizing and then decluttering.
Right.
But
I'm so excited about the decluttering one. I'm jumping ahead.
We are. Think about this week. Challenge yourself. So we're in week 2. First, you set your goals. Now let's plan on action items. Like no plan is a plan without action, right? Or no goal is going to happen without your action. So we could talk about it all day long, but if you don't actually implement those actions and what you're learning, then we're not going to go anywhere either. So take this week to see, like Debbie just shared her progress report. Think about where you're starting and see what you do this week with when that motivation might run out, or how you're motivated, and the little things you're doing daily to get closer to that goal. So just challenge yourself and see. And I like when people write down weaknesses too, or weak points. What made you lose it? If you do, hopefully you don't, but what triggered, Andrea said that last week about like, if you're a snacker and you're going to grab stuff, what's your thought? What's your feeling at the time? What's making you feel like you can't do this? That's what we want to get to, because you can't identify your bad habits until you realize where they came from, and you can't fix them until you realize where they came from. So let's think about those things. Get ready with your pen and paper all week long and try.
And even doing that is moving forward. So even if you can identify, even if you quote fell off the wagon, but you were able to identify what made you fall off the wagon, that's still forward progress, because you're still going to hopefully prevent that from happening as badly the next time. So just, it's all information, and just don't try to put as little judgment or no judgment on anything, you know, as possible. And next week, in addition to organizing, organizational strategies, we're going to be talking about time management. Since many of us always say, well, we don't have enough time to do this, or maybe the goals were falling off the wayside because you didn't have enough time in the day, that we're going to have good tips for how to improve that for all of us as well. And also, if you have information or, you know, topics that you want to talk under those subcategories, feel free. If you want us to focus on something in particular, you know, shoot us an email ahead of time, and we'll make sure we address those. Jackie, did you have something to say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and remember, all of these will be recorded. So if you've missed the live, or if you want to revisit some of these topics, you can always go back on, and we will, you know, you can just recap what we talked about. But I will leave you with this on motivation and such. So when you are feeling like you are getting those negative thoughts in, because we're really practicing positive mindset as we go here, right? Retraining the brain to not go down that negative alley, like I can't, I won't. Change your verbiage, like I can, I will, I am. Those are really power words no matter what. Start training your brain. But I always say, on the days that are struggles, because they're going to be struggle days where you're just in that negative mindset, or you're having a hard time getting out of it, again, as Andrea mentioned earlier, gratitude check. So just take a moment when you feel those negative thoughts coming in and say, what am I grateful for right now? And I guarantee that will change your entire day. So keep that on hand as well. Yeah. And you'll be doing great. All
And
right,
we'll see if my public speaking skills improve by I have 2 more weeks to make that happen, right? So
killing
let's
it.
go.
All right,
Anyway,
group. Well,
thank
thank
you
you.
guys.
Doing great, Andrea.
Thank you.
Thank
Doing
you.
great.
Thank you.
You.
See you guys next week.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.